Good day everyone and welcome to a very special tutorial. Today we will be sharing with you some very special Toon shaders, as you can see, and I'm just going to jump right into it. Now, as you've seen on the demos, each demo has displayed a specific shader and they are light dependent. So first of all, I'm going to show you how to add them to your project. Now, as you can see, we have a very basic project in here. We have a lamp, we've got a cube, and we have our camera. This is the default that Eevee opens with, 2.8. The thing with the Toon shaders is that the specularity is calculated based on the position of the lamp. Now, generally, the shaders would already have these calculations factored in with ifs and thens and all that kind of stuff. We don't have it programmed. So what we need to do is we need to use drivers. This means that light sources like this that are already in the scene will not be taken into account, at least not for the specularity. So what you can do is you can just say goodbye to that little light over there. If you want to, we can keep the cube. And what we want to do is we want to append the material. Now, this only works for the point lamps because the point lamps are the only direct connected shader out of the group. The sun lamps have a little bit more of a complex thing, so we'll get to that as well. So let's append onto this cube a material. So go append, you go to the final files that you downloaded. As you can see, they're not very big. It's like 1.33, 1.33, 1.21, etc. So we're going to be focusing on a point lamp. What you only need to do is you just need to get the material, click on it, say append from library, and boom, there's your light source, because it is directly connected with drivers. Of course, the material didn't just apply to the cube because we only appended the material. We didn't assign the material yet. To assign it, you simply go to the material tab with your object selected, select your material, blend point lamp, and there it is. Now, usually a cube is not really the best analog for this sort of thing. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add some subdivision to make it a sphere. And there you have it. So you can see it supports flat shading as well as smooth, because it is based within the diffuse shader, the diffuse BSDF shader. And of course it supports real lamp shadows, which in this case is made like really hard, but still really low resolution since the lamp is a bit far away. But as you can see, it genuinely works. This is not trying to trick anyone with all manner of fakery or whatever. The only, like I would say, fakery that is in here is the fact that the light source's position has to be given to the shader. This does not mean that you can't have more than one light source for this material. You can. You just need to add it manually, and that's a bit of a headache. So let me show you why it is a bit of a headache. Now, this is the material. This is where the bump mapping is calculated, the general specularity based on the light source's location. Of course, the specularity itself is adjusted, the diffuse is adjusted and calculated, it's mixed, and it's of course set out to the material. So you can add more light sources, but you're going to have to do exactly what is done here and tell the computer to mix them correctly over here with the specularity settings, and of course it will display correctly. Just remember, for every light source you have to do both diffuse and specularity, unless you are doing some sort of a weird mix, which is what NPR is all about. So I'm going to show you guys how to add a sun lamp to a project. Now, sun lamp is a little bit more difficult. So for a sun lamp, I recommend that you add all objects to your scene, or that you would simply just start with the sun lamp thing. But let's assume you have your project running and you just want to add a sun lamp to it. So I'm going to remove this material over here, and I'm going to get rid of my point lamp because it's irrelevant for this project since we just want to use a sun lamp. So let's go for the Blinn sun lamp. I'll explain the difference between the Blinn and Phong in a minute. And go into Objects and select everything except for the camera. So you can just say append. And there we have it. So I'm going to delete this Suzanne monkey head because we don't want her, we want the material on the sphere. So you can see it's also labeled quite obviously Blinn sun lamp, and there it is. Now if we rotate our sun lamp, look at that. Now immediately you should notice that it kind of shines and goes dim and shines and goes dim. This is based on the horizon level, which is kind of similar to how a sun would behave in general. But it's not really what you would want it to do. I tried many different combinations of editing the normals to get it to stay bright, but for some reason it just does not. No matter what you do, it keeps shifting. So you're going to have to drive it in some clever way to get it to do that. So what happens is the lower it goes below the horizon, the darker it gets. So you see, the brighter, higher, lower, darker, just like that. Another thing that it does is it is also affected by the environment lighting. So let me turn the environment lighting way up and rotate it. You will see that the dimming is still there, but it's less obvious. Now let me show you what happens if I turn it completely off. See what I mean? So it is a bit of a limitation, but it shouldn't be something that would interfere with your projects in general. Really shouldn't. As you can see, it responds to the sun lamp correctly as if the light is coming only from a single place. Only from a single direction. Let me correct myself on that one. And of course you can rotate it and all that kind of stuff, and it doesn't mess with your specularity or any of that kind of stuff. So how do we use these materials? So this is the Blinn point lamp. I will get to the difference between the two in a second, the Blinn and the Phong. But I'm just going to show you how this works first. Now, first of all, you can use flat colors for your diffuse, or you can use textures for your diffuse. I just want to get back that green. I'm going to use a checker texture because it's the most obvious. I'm going to go for this kind of red and blue thing that's really bright and beautiful. I really like this. Okay, look at that. Isn't that just the most awesome thing? I just love that. Now you can texture the diffuse and you can texture the specularity. You can texture both, you can texture just one, you can texture neither, it doesn't matter. You can affect its darkness, the diffuse color's darkness. If you just want the shadows to define it, you can. If you want the shadows only to complement the diffuse, you can also set it fairly high at a value of 1. Anything above it will just be ignored. Unfortunately, the value node doesn't have a limiter built into it. So I just usually keep it just over 0.7-ish. Diffuse size, obvious. Ambient light is the general lighting on your shape itself. This is a cool trick that they've added in 2.8. I don't know if it's in previous versions, I haven't noticed it. But if one is selected and you adjust something similar, you can see that it adjusts the previous one as well. Isn't that the coolest thing? I've started using this as a productivity tool as well. It's really, really cool. So I just want to make this bigger again. And you can adjust the overall brightness. This is like environment lighting on a per material basis. This is what why I've added ambient light to it. So I'm just going to keep it on about 0.1. So moving on, we have our specularity, which we've just talked about. And of course, we can change its intensity. See, it's again adjusting this whole mix of things. I'm sorry. So just need to make sure you select the right stuff. You can make it brighter or darker. And of course, you can make its size bigger or smaller as well. It's fairly straightforward. This is not rocket science. You can also add bump mapping to it. I'm going to use the normal noise texture because it is already color, so it gives a really great example. So let me just add up distortion, reduce this detail, and scale it nice and proper so we get a good result. Look at that. Isn't that just so great? Now, of course, you can make this effect stronger. Personally, I've noticed that it looks horrible if you try. This is using an average between the normals that are there and the normals that we're changing with the texture. If you wanted to make it stronger, you can just add another vector math node in here and just say it should add your normal map to whatever is going on at the moment. Personally, I don't like the way that looks. It's way too much. It flattens the object out, or it makes it look like it's crumpled even though it's not, which is great for a certain NPR type stuff if you want to do that, but for general use you're not going to do that with the shader, so we didn't include it. Moving on, I'm just going to delete this. What you can also do is you can soften up these harsh edges over here. So if you wanted to have soft specularity with hard toon shading, all you need to do is just set this to ease or linear, and you can adjust your specularity to be nice and harsh or even inverted. Look at that. Personally, I prefer to keep it nice and sharp, but that's just me personally. You don't have to do it that way. This is NPR. You can do whatever. That's the cool thing about NPR. One of the different things about this is that you need to increase the diffuse size value, not the diffuse size value, in order to get a softer look that's a little bit more controllable. As you can see, it gets a little bit softer. It also grows, but it gets a little bit softer. So you can then take this and make it harsh that way, or you can make it more sharp that way, whatever. Just have fun with it. Okay, I'm just going to set this back to normal. Constant. And of course, I have to bring this size back to normal. Something like that. Another great effect is to remove the flatness of the material. Now, the easiest way is to just remove the normal, just like that. And immediately you can see it has a softer look. The way to see it clearer is to actually remove the dark diffuse, or to just make it a lot bigger. So I'm going to show you what it looks like without it. It's not very good. And of course with just enlarging it. Something like that. There are various effects that you can apply here. Turning off the ambient light usually helps in this situation to give you a little bit of a stronger look. So anyway, I'm just going to reactivate that. Boo. The difference between Phong and Blinn has to do with the distance of the light source to the object. Now with Blinn, it is fairly neutral. It does affect it slightly, but with Phong, the closer it is, the smaller the specularity and the brighter. Now because this is an NPR shader, it's not getting brighter, it's just shrinking with the light source getting closer to it and expanding with the light source going away from it. The advantage is because it's a point lamp, it will also dim. So you get the right effect when you go away, but not so much when you come close. It's also not very predictable, the Phong one. It's quite sensitive, overly sensitive, which is why I prefer the Blinn model to begin with. So let me just show you guys. I'm going to make this one's diffuse a little bit darker and its specularity full blast, just so it's very obvious what we're doing. So this is the light source, obviously. Now I'm going to just place it above our head so we can see the effect that the light source has. So this is what happens when you go away. You can see that the specularity is fairly static, but it does tend to shrink a little bit when you come closer, just like that. Not quite aligned, am I? I saw that with the specularity. Okay, so this is what happens when you use the Blinn model. Now I'm going to show you what happens when you use the Phong model. So this is for the Phong point lamp. Of course, we need to have the camera view active. some of these shaders don't show right out of camera, but they all show correctly within the camera. So if you see that it looks absolutely horrible and inverted and wrong outside of camera, that's normal. Don't freak out about it. It's part of the limitations of how this was implemented. So anyway, let's take this little guy over here. Just want it to be showing. Okay. Now, unfortunately, it is way too close to the material at the moment. Just want to make it be a little bit more forward. There we go. Okay. So the closer it gets, the less you see it. And the further away it gets, the more you see it. So what I want to show you guys as well is that this does mix really well with the post-processing effects from Eevee as well. The previous shader, as you can see on screen right now, did not respond very favorably to the post-processing effects. So I'm going to again switch to the Blinn model, and then I'm going to show you how it responds with the post-processing effects and how it responds with other shaders being mixed with it. So here we're back in the point lamp. I'm just going to add a plane so we have something to reflect off of. I'm just going to show you how it responds to screen space reflections. It responds beautifully, in case you were curious. Let's just add a new glossy material. So we're going to use the reflections. As you can see, it looks awesome. And of course we want, let's make it half resolution so it runs a little faster. And increase the samples to about 5 or, no, it's stopping at 4. Thickness, we can increase the thickness. It's sort of like the light bias in a way. And of course, edge fading is supposed to kind of edge out these little edges over here, just to make it look nice. But you can see that it plays really, really well with the shader. It's fantastic. Now I want to also show you how it mixes with other shaders. So all the way over here, you can see that it is already added with an emission shader and all that kind of stuff, which controls the ambient light. Now we're going to mix it with a transparency shader. Let me just get it. Mix shader and transparency. There we go. Oh, misclicked it. Transparent BSDF. There. Now initially you see nothing happen. The reason for that is that, like Blender Render, you have to set this in your material itself. So instead of opaque, you would go for alpha blend. And boom, there it is. So you see it has a very nice reaction to the transparent shade here. No funniness, no weirdness, it just works. Now this also works with other more complex shaders like the glass one. Now the glass one does require a little bit of extra effort because you do need to turn on screen space refraction, and you also need to turn on the screen space refraction in the post-processing as well. So let's add like a cube in here, and let's make it a different color. Let's go for diffuse. I'm going to go for a yellow. I like this kind of yellow look. Something like that. Now this is one of the issues with the alpha blend mode, is that it tends to respond kind of oddly. So you're expecting to see the face, but it's inverted. Weird. There we go. Okay. So this has nothing to do, of course, with the Toon shader. I'm just showing you what it does with the glass. So you see it mixes really, really beautifully. We've got this toony material with a more realistic kind of glassy feel. It's just absolutely fantastic. So I'm just going to chuck that because I can hear my computer. Anyway, one thing that I didn't show you guys yet is that the point lamp's shadows work correctly. Look at this. You can see that the specularity is cut off completely, as well as the diffuse, and this area is completely black. Unfortunately, the sun lamp does not cooperate in the same way. You just add a plane in here. I just need to be in this view right here. Now look at the head. This spot over here is actually specularity. Let me show you. See? It doesn't cut away because the world lighting also affects it. Which is unfortunate, but it's not the end of the world. You can still use it like this. As you've seen in the demos, it's not something that should discourage you from using these. So anyway, this took a few months of work, honestly. I couldn't have done it without God's help. I kid you not. This is so far above what I usually do. And on top of that, I barely passed math. I mean, if they didn't lower the passing grade, I would not have passed math in the first place. Anyway, I'm super thankful he helped us with this, and I couldn't have done it without Wasili's help as well. You could say he laid the foundation for this particular shader system as well. You can find links in the description to the downloads for these files, multiple sources. You will also find Wasili's technical video / proposal at the end of this video and linked in the description below and on the websites, etc, etc, etc. Well, I hope you guys find this to be a huge blessing and very helpful. Have a great one, and God bless you.